Hello, and welcome to another day in paradise. Now, not many of you know this, but I have an older brother that's some 4 years older than me, and I love him dearly, but I don't speak to him that often, which is a shame. In fact, I haven't spoken to him in at least 10 years, so it's been some time since I've seen him. He's sort of estranged from the rest of the family, which is very sad. I always ask myself why the relationship between my eldest brother and the rest of my family soured. I sometimes feel sad that I didn't have the relationship with my older brother that I wish I could have had. Just someone that would have been there, that I could have relied on and depend on growing up in a mostly white environment. My brother was a warrior, I know this, and he was a radical as well. And I truly believe he was misunderstood, as he actually was a victim of his time, of the time that he was brought up in. He grew up in a very racist environment, so we're talking about central England in the mid-1980s, so full of scumbags. He went to a school where they were still whipping children, actually, that got out of line. This was the norm back in the UK. My brother is extremely racist. He hates anyone who doesn't have my skin complexion, which is a difficult thing for me to accept, being a parent with mixed heritage children. Now, I'm not going to make excuses for him, but I truly believe that he was a victim of his circumstances and environment. He grew up in a place where people hated him purely for the colour of his skin, and my brother reacted in a way which seems pretty fucking logical to me. Yeah. Everything got to him. I could see the anger inside of him. I could see the fire burning. It's now got to a point in which if I see him smile, it just looks strange. It really does, because I didn't remember seeing him smile so often. He's now extremely sharp-tongued and short on patience. I always wondered what it was that eventually made him cave in. And then I read an article on an IG profile about a syndrome called racial battle fatigue. It made perfect sense to me that my brother was, of course, struggling with the effects of battling racism over a long period of time, largely by himself. In the beginning, my brother embraced the cultures and races. I remember this thoroughly. I remember some Indian boys back in the days, we're talking about the mid-80s here, getting beaten up by a gang of National Front guys. And for those who don't know, the National Front is a UK-based far right-wing anti-immigration political party. And my brother intervened in this fight. Actually, he didn't need much of an excuse to get his hands on some of his arch enemies. They stuck out like a sore thumb anyway, because they all wore Dr. Martin boots and had skinheads. Fucking twats. So anyway, he joined in to help these Indian guys, and he beat up most of these National Front guys practically by himself. From that day on, his name went down in folklore in my area. People knew his name because of this particular incident. Question is, if that same incident was to happen today, would he do the same thing? I doubt it. So what changed him? And what is racial battle fatigue? And what can we do as African diasporans to do to fight this? Well, I'm going to try and do my best to answer these questions now. So what is racial battle fatigue? Racial battle fatigue was a term first coined in 2008 by the critical race theorist William Smith. It was originally used in reference to the experiences of African American men in America, but is now expanded to describe the negative racially charged experiences of people of color in general in the United States. He described it as a cumulative result of a natural race-related stress response to distressing mental and emotional conditions. These conditions emerged from constantly facing racially dismissive, demeaning, insensitive, and or hostile racial environments and individuals. Now, because it is cumulative, it can sneak up on someone and have adverse mental effects without you even knowing that it's happening. So, what are the actual effects? Racial battle fatigue is mentally debilitating condition. Its effects vary from person and can lead to anxiety and to depression and increased anger. Imagine being in a never-ending battle every single day, not knowing when it was going to end. This is what most diasporans who are minorities in other countries go through on a daily basis. Now, in hindsight, I strongly believe that racial battle fatigue is what led to my brother's breakdown. I truly believe that. I truly believe that racial battle fatigue affects those of the African diaspora more so than any other race because of one major contributing factor: community. That's right. I'll say that again. Community. I think that the fragmented nature of our community really puts us at a disadvantage. So how do we combat it? To answer this question, I think it's important that we look at the way other races combat it. Okay, so what do other races do that we don't do? Well, let's look at the Pakistani and Indian communities. Asian communities in general have a more intrinsic, more inclusive, more tightly grouped communities for which they have refuge from the white societies in which these communities are normally based in. This gives them the ability to regroup and repair. It gives them the ability to build up a strong immunity against racial battle fatigue. When they need to go out of the house, it's likely they're going to bump into people of their own colour, of their own background, of their own ethnicity. It's likely that the bus driver is going to be of their ethnicity. It's likely that their neighbours are going to be of their ethnicity. It's likely that their doctors will be of their own ethnicity. The dentist, if they are going to work, they normally have family business, so it's likely they're going to go and work with their own family members. This puts them in a strong position where the contact and effects of other races are extremely limited. Ask yourself this: have you ever seen a Chinese person be really offended by a person saying something racist towards them? No? Of course not. This rarely happens, and this is because the Chinese truly do not see your opinion or your thoughts as anything but irrelevant. In fact, if you are not ethnically Chinese, it's likely your insults will go unheard because they truly don't care about what you think. Yes, it is true that they will take different aspects of other cultural practices, but it is almost impossible to offend them because you cannot be offended by someone who you don't respect. Simply put, the Chinese have zero respect or tolerance for anyone who is not ethnically Chinese. Asians will also routinely take trips back to their home countries, and they will stay there for extended amounts of time. Now, many Africans do the same, but tend to spend their wealth in Europe and in America as opposed to spending it in Africa. Spending our money this way means we are constantly bleeding wealth as a community whilst we enrich others. It's a tragic tale and something that has been happening in Africa for a very long time. Another way that African diasporans can save our own mental health is to simply move back to Africa. I know it sounds a bit extreme, but we're in extreme times. Times have changed, and as the pandemic and the lockdown has proven many of us can work remotely, there has never been a better time for us to spread our wings and at least build a safe haven in our homelands. We don't have to move back there permanently. Imagine living a life where you are no longer a minority. Can you imagine that? And what about me? Well, what about me? You may be asking. Well, I am an African diasporan. I live in Switzerland, for heaven's sakes. Well, I've already made plans to eventually lay my roots back in the motherland, and I'm really looking forward to it. It'll be such an exciting time in my life, and it'll be a challenge that I think I'll revel in. I'm looking forward to it, definitely. Now, I say this with a heavy heart because I truly believe us as African diasporans are different. We are people who will not only embrace other cultures, but will accept and welcome other people and love other people, no matter the race, ethnicity, or background. This trait has constantly been used against us. Just look at our history. Look at the Europeans. They didn't just come to Africa and take the land by gunpoint. They came, we welcomed and accepted them with open arms. And just like the Trojan horse, they destroyed our communities from the inside out. We are a forgiving people. Perhaps too forgiving. We are not like other communities in that sort of a sense, so it's really difficult for me to say this. But in a modern world, we have to accept that the problems we have can be mitigated by adopting some of these practices and assimilating them as our own. Not just to protect our culture, but to protect the mental health of African diasporans all around the world. So what are your thoughts on this? And do you have any questions? Yeah, it'd be nice to hear from you guys. Please don't hesitate to leave your comments and questions below. And right now I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day. I hope you're enjoying yours. Ta-ra a bit.